Introduction. There is a common misconception that success is driven primarily by motivation. People often assume that high achievers wake up every day filled with inspiration, enthusiasm, and boundless energy to chase their goals. This belief creates a myth around motivation, as if it were the secret fuel that carries people to greatness. The truth, however, is far less glamorous and far more empowering. Motivation is fleeting, but discipline is enduring. While motivation comes in waves, sometimes high and sometimes absent, discipline is the steady current that carries you forward regardless of how you feel. Motivation is emotional in nature. It thrives when circumstances are favorable, when the environment is encouraging, and when results come quickly. But when the inevitable obstacles arise, when progress slows, and when fatigue sets in, motivation often evaporates. It is at these points of struggle where most people give up. Discipline, on the other hand, does not depend on moods or conditions. It is the ability to act in alignment with your commitments rather than your feelings. Where motivation whispers, "Do it when you feel like it," discipline declares, "Do it because you said you would." It is the muscle that overrides excuses, silences hesitation, and compels you to move forward, even when comfort calls louder than ambition. This is why discipline is the single most important determinant of success across every field of life. In business, the marketplace rewards those who can consistently show up, deliver value, and refine their craft, even when no applause is given. In health, the body responds not to occasional bursts of inspiration, but to steady training, nutritious eating, and regular rest practiced over months and years. In relationships, lasting bonds are not built on momentary sparks, but on daily acts of commitment, respect, and intentional effort. Even in spirituality and personal growth, breakthroughs do not come from sporadic moments of insight, but from sustained practices, prayer, meditation, study, reflection, that shape the mind and character over time. Every form of mastery, every lasting achievement, every true transformation is born out of discipline. Discipline is the bridge between desire and achievement. Many people dream of success, envision a better life, or set lofty goals, but dreams alone do not manifest into reality. The gap between what you want and what you actually accomplish is filled by your capacity to be disciplined. Without it, ambitions remain fantasies, ideas remain unfinished projects, and potential remains unrealized. With it, however, even ordinary individuals can rise to extraordinary heights. Discipline is what turns sporadic effort into consistent practice, and consistent practice into undeniable results. This book is written with a single purpose: to help you cultivate the discipline that allows you to master your mind, build consistency, and achieve anything you set your heart on. Within these pages, you will learn how to overcome the myth of waiting for motivation, and instead take control of your actions. You will discover practical methods to train your mind, strengthen your willpower, and rewire your habits so that discipline becomes second nature. You will explore the systems and strategies that create consistency in your daily life so that progress is no longer accidental but intentional. Most importantly, you will come to see discipline not as a restriction, but as the pathway to freedom. The freedom to live life on your terms, to bring your visions into reality, and to unlock the full measure of your potential. Chapter 1. The Psychology of Self-Discipline. To understand discipline, you must first understand the inner workings of your mind. Discipline is not simply about forcing yourself to do hard things or suppressing your desires. It is rooted in psychology, in the delicate balance between willpower, self-control, and the way the brain responds to reward and gratification. The more deeply you understand these inner mechanisms, the easier it becomes to harness them in your favor and transform discipline from a struggle into a skill. At the heart of self-discipline lies willpower. Willpower is often thought of as a kind of inner energy, a mental fuel that allows you to resist temptation and stay focused on long-term goals. It is what allows you to choose the salad over the cake, to stay at your desk and complete a project when you would rather scroll endlessly on your phone, to wake up early for the gym when the warmth of your bed tempts you to stay. But psychologists have discovered that willpower is not infinite. Much like a muscle, it can tire with overuse. Each time you exert self-control, You draw upon a limited reserve of mental energy. This explains why it feels harder to resist temptation late at night, or why decisions become more difficult after a long day of choices and responsibilities. This phenomenon, sometimes referred to as decision fatigue, reveals that while willpower is powerful, it cannot be the sole foundation of discipline. This is where self-control takes on a broader meaning. Self-control is not merely about resisting impulses, but about creating conditions in which impulses have less power over you. It is about managing your environment, your thoughts, and your routines so that discipline becomes the natural outcome rather than a constant uphill battle. For instance, someone who removes junk food from their kitchen does not have to rely on willpower every evening to resist eating it. The decision has already been made once, and the environment now supports their discipline. In this way, self-control is less about constant resistance and more about intelligent design, where you align your surroundings and habits with the life you want to live. The science of the brain's reward system sheds even more light on how discipline works. At the center of this system is dopamine, a neurotransmitter often misunderstood as the pleasure chemical. Dopamine is less about pleasure itself and more about anticipation. It spikes when you expect a reward, not just when you receive it. This is why you can feel a rush of excitement at the thought of ordering fast food before you even taste it. The brain craves immediate gratification because it has been wired for survival in environments where short-term rewards were critical. Thousands of years ago, eating food the moment it was found could mean the difference between survival and starvation. In today's world, however, this same wiring can become a trap, pulling us toward unhealthy foods, mindless entertainment, or quick wins that derail us from the bigger picture. Discipline, then, requires training the brain to value delayed gratification over immediate satisfaction. It is about teaching yourself to find joy in the process, to attach pleasure not only to the instant reward, but to the journey itself. When you learn to associate satisfaction with long-term progress, when finishing a workout feels more rewarding than skipping it, when saving money feels better than spending it on impulse, you rewire your reward system. The marshmallow test, a famous psychological study, illustrated this principle vividly. Children were offered one marshmallow immediately, or the promise of 2 marshmallows if they could wait. Those who learned to delay gratification went on, in later studies, to show higher levels of success, health, and achievement in life. The ability to wait, to resist, to endure discomfort for something greater, lies at the very core of self-discipline. But discipline is not only a battle of willpower and rewards. It is also shaped by the silent power of thought. Every action begins in the mind. The way you think influences the way you behave, and the patterns of thought you cultivate become the habits that define your life. If your inner dialogue is full of defeatist language, I can't do this, I always fail, I'll never be consistent, then your actions will align with those beliefs. On the other hand, when your thoughts reinforce discipline, I am capable of doing hard things, I choose long-term gain over short-term pleasure, I act according to my goals, not my feelings, your brain begins to normalize disciplined behavior. This is why cultivating self-awareness is essential. Without awareness, your thoughts run on autopilot, and habits form unconsciously, often in ways that undermine your goals. With awareness, you can pause, observe the thought that precedes the action, and choose differently. For example, if you notice the thought, "I'll just do this later," you can challenge it with, "No, I'll take action now because my future self deserves the reward." Over time, these conscious interventions reshape the pathways in your brain, turning disciplined choices into automatic habits. The very wiring of your mind begins to favor discipline, reducing the reliance on raw willpower and creating a cycle where good thoughts lead to good actions, and good actions reinforce good thoughts. Self-discipline, therefore, is not a single trait you are born with or without. It is a psychological process, a skill that can be cultivated through understanding willpower, restructuring your reward system, and mastering the dialogue of your own mind. It is both science and art, the science of how the brain works, and the art of applying that knowledge to build a life of intentional action. When you learn to align your psychology with your purpose, discipline stops being a punishment or a burden and becomes your greatest ally in creating the life you desire. Chapter 2. Breaking mental barriers. The greatest obstacles to discipline are rarely external. They are not the lack of opportunities, the scarcity of resources, or even the overwhelming demands of life. The most formidable barriers exist within the mind. Excuses, self-sabotage, and deeply ingrained limiting beliefs act like invisible walls, keeping you confined to the familiar and holding you back from the extraordinary. If you want to master discipline, you must first confront and dismantle these inner barriers. Only then can you harness the full power of your potential and create lasting change. Excuses are perhaps the most common form of self-deception. On the surface, they appear harmless, tiny justifications that explain why something cannot be done today. I'll start tomorrow. I'm too tired. The timing isn't right. I'm just not that kind of person. These statements provide temporary relief by shielding us from the discomfort of effort, but they come at a devastating long-term cost. Excuses erode trust in yourself. Each time you make a promise to act, but hide behind an excuse, you teach your subconscious that your words are meaningless. You begin to see yourself as unreliable, and this quiet erosion of self-trust makes it even harder to summon discipline in the future. The cycle becomes vicious. The more you excuse, the more you doubt yourself. And the more you doubt yourself, the easier it is to excuse. Breaking free begins with brutal honesty. You must recognize that every excuse is a choice to prioritize comfort over growth, a choice to delay the life you could be building right now. Closely linked to excuses is the act of self-sabotage. Unlike excuses, which delay action, self-sabotage actively undermines it. It is the strange tendency to destroy the very progress you long for. You set a goal to save money, then overspend on something frivolous. You commit to eating healthier, then binge at the first sign of stress. You begin to see momentum in your work, then procrastinate until deadlines become crises. On the surface, this seems irrational. Why would anyone undermine their own success? The answer lies in the hidden comfort of familiarity. Success requires change, and change disrupts the known patterns of life. Even when those patterns are unhealthy, they are familiar, and the mind clings to them for security. Self-sabotage is often the unconscious attempt to return to what feels safe, even if it is destructive. Recognizing this tendency allows you to interrupt it. Each time you feel the pull to undo your progress, you can pause and ask, what fear am I trying to avoid? What comfort am I clinging to? By shining light on the unconscious, you reclaim the power to choose differently. Beneath excuses and sabotage lie the deeper roots, limiting beliefs. These are the silent scripts written into your mind, often in childhood, reinforced over years, and rarely questioned. They whisper phrases like, I'm not disciplined, I'm not good enough, people like me don't succeed, or this is just who I am. These beliefs are powerful because they operate invisibly, shaping your perception of what is possible. If you believe you are incapable of discipline, then every failed attempt reinforces that story, even if the failure was just a stumble along the way. If you believe success is reserved for others, you will unconsciously behave in ways that ensure you never reach it. Limiting beliefs shrink your world, convincing you that the cage you live in is reality, when in fact, it is only perception. To break free, you must challenge these beliefs with evidence and new experiences. Begin by questioning them. Where did this belief come from? Is it truly your own? Or was it inherited from the voices of parents, teachers, or society? Then begin to collect proof of the opposite. Each small disciplined action, whether it is waking up when you said you would, following through on a task, or resisting a temptation, becomes a piece of evidence that dismantles the old belief and builds a new one. Over time, you rewrite your identity, not as someone who struggles with discipline, but as someone who lives it. Belief, after all, is not static. It is built by repeated experience. By consciously creating new experiences, you forge beliefs that support rather than sabotage your growth. A final and often overlooked barrier is the perception of discomfort. Many people associate discipline with pain, restriction, and suffering. They see it as the sacrifice of pleasure, the denial of freedom, the heavy burden of endless effort. With this mindset, it is no wonder that discipline feels unbearable. But the truth is that discomfort is not your enemy. It is your greatest ally. Discomfort is the language of growth. Muscles grow only when they are stressed beyond their comfort zone. Skills sharpen only when practiced through frustration. Character strengthens only when tested by adversity. When you reframe discomfort as a sign that you are stretching, expanding, and evolving, it no longer becomes something to avoid but something to embrace. Consider the runner who feels the burn in their lungs, or the writer who stares at a blank page in frustration. In both cases, discomfort signals progress. Without it, the body and mind remain stagnant. With it, transformation becomes possible. Instead of asking, "How can I avoid discomfort?" begin asking, "What is this discomfort teaching me? How is it shaping me into the person I want to become?" This shift in perspective turns what was once an obstacle into fuel. You stop fearing the pain of discipline because you recognize it as the cost of freedom. Breaking mental barriers is not about eliminating all negative thoughts or becoming immune to struggle. It is about recognizing the patterns that hold you back and choosing to respond differently. Excuses lose their power when you commit to honesty. Self-sabotage weakens when you confront the fears driving it. Limiting beliefs dissolve when you challenge them with new experiences. Discomfort transforms from an enemy into a teacher when you reframe its meaning. The mind will always present obstacles. It is wired to protect you from change and preserve comfort. But discipline is not about silencing the mind. It is about mastering it. By breaking these mental barriers, you clear the path for consistent action. You become stronger than your excuses, wiser than your fears, and braver than your discomfort. In doing so, you unlock a level of discipline that no longer feels forced but flows naturally from a mind that believes, a will that endures, and a heart that embraces growth. Chapter 3. Building a disciplined mindset. Discipline is not something you can impose on yourself from the outside. It must be built from within. At the heart of discipline lies mindset, the internal framework of beliefs, values, and perspectives that shapes how you approach challenges and persist through difficulties. Without the right mindset, discipline feels like punishment, a constant struggle against your own nature. But when you cultivate the mindset of discipline, it stops being a heavy burden and becomes an empowering force, one that carries you forward even when the path is long and demanding. The first foundation of a disciplined mindset is clarity and vision. You cannot remain disciplined if you do not know what you are striving toward or why it matters. Many people struggle with discipline not because they lack strength, but because they lack direction. They wake up each day reacting to life instead of moving intentionally toward a vision. Clarity acts as a compass. When you know precisely what you want, whether it is building a thriving career, achieving peak health, nurturing meaningful relationships, or mastering a craft, you are far less likely to be swayed by distractions. Every disciplined action becomes a step toward that vision, and every temptation to quit can be weighed against the greater picture of what you stand to gain or lose. Vision sharpens discipline because it transforms vague desires into concrete commitments. It is not enough to say, "I want to be successful," or "I want to be healthy." The disciplined mind asks, "What does success look like for me? What does health mean in my life? What kind of future am I building?" When you define your vision clearly, you remove the fog of uncertainty, and with it, the excuses that thrive in ambiguity. Discipline becomes less about denying yourself and more about aligning with the person you intend to become. Each choice is no longer a random act, but a deliberate move in service of your larger destiny. Beyond clarity, purpose serves as the fuel of discipline. Vision tells you where you're going, but purpose tells you why you must go there. Discipline without purpose feels empty and unsustainable. You can force yourself to work hard for a while, but eventually fatigue sets in if there is no deeper meaning behind the effort. Purpose gives discipline its staying power. It connects your actions to something larger than momentary comfort or fleeting pleasure. When you know that your sacrifices are feeding your children, building a legacy, serving your community, or fulfilling a calling, then discipline becomes not a burden, but a privilege. Purpose transforms struggle into significance. Waking up at dawn to practice, staying late to refine your craft, or pushing through physical pain at the gym takes on a different meaning when you know exactly why you're doing it. The tired student studying late into the night does not endure for the sake of exhaustion, but for the dream of becoming a doctor who saves lives. The entrepreneur who sacrifices leisure and stability does not do so to simply work harder, but to create freedom, innovation, or opportunities for others. When you are connected to your purpose, discipline becomes an act of devotion, a daily reminder that your life is moving towards something greater. But vision and purpose alone are not enough. Life will test you. It will put obstacles in your way, disappoint you with setbacks, and tempt you to give up. This is why cultivating resilience and mental toughness is essential to building a disciplined mindset. Resilience is the capacity to bend without breaking, to endure without surrendering. Mental toughness is the ability to stay steady when circumstances are turbulent, to maintain commitment when results are slow, and to push forward when everything in you wants to retreat. Resilience is not built in moments of ease, but in the fire of difficulty. Every failure you encounter, every challenge you overcome, every time you stand back up after falling, you strengthen the muscles of resilience. What once felt unbearable eventually becomes manageable. The weight that once crushed you becomes the weight that shapes you. Resilient people are not those who never fall. They are those who refuse to stay down. They treat every obstacle as an opportunity to grow stronger, every failure as a lesson, and every disappointment as training for the greater victories ahead. Mental toughness, meanwhile, requires you to shift your relationship with struggle. Instead of interpreting setbacks as signs of inadequacy, the tough-minded see them as proof that they are on the path of growth. They know that progress is rarely linear. Some days will bring breakthroughs, while others will bring stagnation or even regression. But the disciplined mind does not measure success by one day's results. It measures it by the consistency of effort over time. The tough-minded do not wait for ideal conditions to act. They create momentum regardless of circumstances. They recognize that discipline is not about perfection, but persistence, not about never faltering, but about never quitting. Together, clarity, purpose, and toughness form the triad of a disciplined mindset. With clarity, you know where you're going. With purpose, you understand why you must endure. With resilience and toughness, you withstand whatever comes along the way. When these elements combine, discipline no longer feels like forcing yourself against resistance. It becomes the natural expression of who you are and what you stand for. It becomes your identity. Discipline at this level transcends effort and becomes character. You no longer ask yourself whether you will act. You simply act because it is who you are. The disciplined mindset is not about willpower alone, but about alignment. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your purpose, and your actions all point in the same direction, creating a momentum that nothing can easily derail. You stop living as a slave to moods and impulses and begin living as the architect of your destiny. Chapter 4. The Power of Daily Habits. Discipline is most visible not in grand gestures, but in the ordinary, quiet routines that fill each day. It is in the choices you make when no one is watching, the small decisions repeated so often that they eventually fade into the background of your life. These choices, repeated daily, form habits. Habits are powerful because they shape not only what you do, but also who you become. They are the invisible architecture of destiny, constructing your future one action at a time. Every person lives under the influence of their habits. They may not always be aware of it, but the trajectory of a life is often the sum of repeated actions, not the rare bursts of effort. A person who develops the habit of reading daily will over the years accumulate wisdom and perspective that set them apart. A person who neglects exercise and nutrition, not once but repeatedly, will eventually face the compounded weight of those choices in their health. Habits work quietly, almost invisibly, but their impact is undeniable. They are the bridge between intention and identity, the link between your goals and your outcomes. You do not rise to the level of your aspirations. You fall to the level of your habits. The reason habits shape destiny is that they operate automatically. Once ingrained, they bypass the need for constant willpower. You do not need to debate every morning whether to brush your teeth. It happens almost unconsciously. The same can be true of the habits that serve your greater goals. When discipline is encoded into habit, it becomes effortless. This is why creating systems of consistent action is more effective than relying on bursts of motivation. Habits free you from the exhaustion of decision-making, preserving your energy for higher challenges while still ensuring that your foundation remains strong. One of the most powerful truths about habits is the way small actions compound over time. A single workout will not transform your body, just as a single study session will not make you an expert. But when these actions are repeated daily, they accumulate into extraordinary results. The principle of compounding, often spoken about in finance, applies just as powerfully to personal growth. Just as small amounts of money invested consistently grow into vast wealth, small habits practiced consistently grow into mastery and transformation. The danger is that this principle works both ways. Neglect also compounds. One missed workout or one unhealthy meal may not matter in isolation, but repeated daily, it snowballs into weakness and illness. One ignored responsibility may seem insignificant, but when multiplied over months and years, it becomes failure. This is why discipline requires awareness, not just of what you do in the moment, but of what those actions will become over time. Every habit plants a seed, and every seed grows into something. The question is not whether you're planting, but what you are planting. The key to creating habits that stick lies in understanding how to build them effectively. One of the most practical methods is habit stacking, the practice of attaching a new behavior to an existing one. The brain loves patterns. When you tie a new habit to something you already do consistently, the new behavior is more likely to take root. For example, if you already brush your teeth every morning, you can use that moment as a cue to also drink a glass of water. If you already make coffee, you can use that time to read a page of a book. The existing habit becomes the anchor, and the new habit grows from it. Habit stacking works because it reduces the friction of starting. You are not asking your brain to carve out an entirely new time and place for the behavior. You are simply adding it to something that already feels natural. Over time, these stacks grow into powerful routines. A single morning ritual can evolve into a cascade of disciplined behaviors. Waking up, journaling, exercising, meditating, and planning the day. Each one flows into the next, creating momentum that sets the tone for the hours that follow. The power of habit stacking lies not only in efficiency, but also in identity. Each time you follow through on a stacked habit, you reinforce the story you're telling yourself about who you are. You're not just someone who brushes their teeth. You are someone who also prioritizes hydration. You are not just someone who drinks coffee. You are someone who learns every morning. These subtle shifts matter because discipline is not just about what you do, but about who you become. The more you align your habits with the identity you want to embody, the more natural and sustainable discipline becomes. Daily habits are the soil in which discipline grows. They do not demand perfection, nor do they require dramatic effort. They ask only for consistency. And in exchange for that consistency, they deliver transformation. They shape your body, your mind, your relationships, your career, and your character. Over time, they define your destiny. The disciplined person is not someone who exerts willpower in every moment, straining to control every impulse. The disciplined person is someone who has arranged their life around habits that support their goals, who has learned to plant the right seeds daily and let the power of time and compounding do the rest. This is why habits are often called the compound interest of self-improvement. They seem small at first, but they grow into something monumental. To master your destiny, you must master your habits. And to master your habits, you must recognize that every choice, however small, is a vote for the person you are becoming. Over time, those votes accumulate, creating a reality that matches the identity you have been practicing. This is the quiet power of daily habits. They do not shout, they do not demand attention, but they shape everything. Chapter 5. Systems over motivation. One of the most common mistakes people make when pursuing success is to rely too heavily on motivation. Motivation feels powerful because it often sparks the initial desire to act. It is the surge of energy you feel after watching an inspiring video, reading a powerful story, or imagining the future you want. But motivation, as strong as it may feel in the moment, is unreliable. It rises and falls like a wave, and no one can ride that wave forever. When motivation disappears, and it always does, you're left with nothing but your habits and systems. This is why systems matter more than goals and motivation. Goals are useful in that they provide direction. They give you something to aim at, a destination that makes your journey purposeful. But goals alone do not determine whether you succeed or fail. Two people can have the same goal of running a marathon, but only the one with a system of regular training, proper nutrition, and recovery routines will get to the finish line. The truth is that goals describe outcomes, but systems create the processes that lead to those outcomes. A goal without a system is like wishing for a harvest without planting seeds or tending the soil. You may know what you want, but without a structure to support it, you will continually fall back on willpower and motivation, and sooner or later, both will fade. Systems matter more than goals because they shift the focus from results to process. Instead of obsessing over whether you have achieved the end point, you immerse yourself in building the daily practices that make success inevitable. If your system is to write 500 words a day, you will eventually finish a book regardless of how motivated you feel. If your system is to invest a portion of your income each month, you will build wealth regardless of daily fluctuations in desire. Systems remove the emotional volatility of waiting for motivation and replace it with the steady reliability of structure. A critical part of building effective systems is designing an environment that enforces discipline. Human beings are far more influenced by their surroundings than they like to admit. You may believe you act purely out of free will, but much of your behavior is shaped by cues in your environment. If unhealthy snacks are within reach, you will eat them. If your phone is full of notifications, you will check it. If your workspace is cluttered, your mind will reflect that clutter. This is not a sign of weakness, but a reality of human psychology. The disciplined individual is not someone who resists temptation at every turn, but someone who arranges their environment so that temptations are less accessible and desired behaviors are easier to perform. If you want to read more, place a book on your pillow each morning so it greets you at night. If you want to exercise, set your workout clothes where you cannot miss them. If you want to eat healthier, stock your fridge with nourishing options and remove junk food altogether. In this way, your environment becomes your silent ally, nudging you toward discipline without constant reliance on willpower. By making the right behaviors obvious and the wrong ones inconvenient, you create a system where success is the natural outcome of your surroundings. The science of routines and rituals deepens this approach. A routine is simply a series of actions performed regularly, while a ritual adds an element of meaning or intentionality to those actions. Both are essential for discipline because they provide structure, predictability, and momentum. When you build routines, you reduce the cognitive load of decision-making. You no longer waste energy asking yourself, should I work out today? Or when should I study? The decision has already been made. The routine guides you automatically. Rituals, on the other hand, add emotional weight to your routines. A ritual transforms a simple action into a meaningful one. For example, lighting a candle before journaling, saying a brief affirmation before starting work, or stretching before bed may seem small, but these rituals signal to your brain that it is time to shift into a particular state. They create a sense of significance, turning ordinary tasks into intentional practices. Over time, these rituals not only reinforce discipline, but also make the process enjoyable and grounding. The brain thrives on patterns. When you repeat actions in consistent sequences, neural pathways strengthen, making the behavior easier to perform each time. This is why routines and rituals are such powerful tools. They automate discipline. What begins as a conscious effort eventually becomes second nature. The more consistent you are, the less effort is required, until your actions flow with minimal resistance. Systems, environments, routines, and rituals together form the infrastructure of discipline. They transform discipline from something you struggle to maintain into something that supports you automatically. When motivation inevitably fades, your systems will still carry you forward. They do not depend on fleeting emotions, but on structures you have consciously designed to align with your vision and purpose. The most disciplined people are not those who fight the hardest against temptation. They are those who set up their lives in such a way that discipline is the path of least resistance. They know that success is not about willpower in the moment, but but about systems that make good decisions easy and bad decisions difficult. By building such systems, you create a life where discipline becomes the natural rhythm of your days, not a battle you fight endlessly. Chapter 6. Mastering Time and Energy. Discipline is not only about willpower or habits. It is also about how you manage two of your most valuable resources, time and energy. These are the currencies of life. Time is finite. Every day you are given 24 hours, no more, no less. Energy, on the other hand, fluctuates depending on your physical health, mental state, and lifestyle. Success belongs to those who not only guard these resources, but also maximize them with intentionality. Without mastery of time and energy, even the strongest resolve will eventually wither under the weight of exhaustion and disorganization. Time management begins with the recognition that not all hours are equal. Some tasks carry immense weight, moving you closer to your long-term vision, while others consume time without producing real value. The disciplined individual understands that time must be treated with reverence and invested wisely. One of the most effective strategies for doing so is time blocking. Time blocking is the practice of scheduling your day in dedicated blocks of time, assigning each block to a specific task or category of work. Rather than drifting aimlessly from one activity to another, you approach the day with a plan, creating intentional space for focus, creativity, rest, and responsibilities. When you block time for your most important tasks first, you ensure that your priorities are not sacrificed to the chaos of urgent, but less significant distractions. This aligns with the principle that what gets scheduled gets done. Time blocking transforms discipline into a visible structure. You can see your commitments laid out before you, and you know exactly where your energy should go at any given moment. Over time, this habit creates a rhythm in your life, a cadence that minimizes wasted hours and maximizes productivity. Closely tied to time blocking is prioritization. Many people confuse being busy with being productive. They spend their days answering emails, attending meetings, or reacting to interruptions, yet make little progress toward their most meaningful goals. Discipline demands that you distinguish between what is urgent and what is truly important. Prioritization is the art of saying no to distractions so that you can say yes to what matters most. By identifying the tasks that have the greatest impact and placing them at the center of your schedule, you prevent your energy from being consumed by trivialities. The disciplined life is not about doing everything. It is about doing the right things consistently. Procrastination is one of the greatest enemies of discipline, but it is not simply a matter of laziness. More often, procrastination arises from fear, overwhelm, or lack of clarity. The mind avoids tasks that feel too big, too uncertain, or too uncomfortable. The antidote is structure. When you break tasks into smaller steps and schedule them in clear blocks of time, you remove the fog of uncertainty that fuels procrastination. Instead of staring at the vague command to write a book, you schedule a block to write 500 words. Instead of dreading the mountain of get fit, you set aside 30 minutes to walk or lift weights. Structure turns intimidating challenges into manageable actions, and each completed action builds momentum. Another effective way to outweigh procrastination is to create external accountability. When you commit your time to others, whether through meetings, deadlines, or accountability partners, you create pressure to follow through. The brain often values social expectation more than private intention, and leveraging this reality can help you maintain structure until discipline becomes self-sustaining. Ultimately, procrastination thrives in ambiguity and disappears in clarity. By structuring your time and actions with discipline, you starve procrastination of its oxygen. Yet time management alone is not enough. You can schedule every minute of your day with precision, but if you lack the energy to follow through, the schedule becomes meaningless. This is why energy management is equally vital. Energy is the fuel that powers discipline, and it must be replenished and protected through rest, nutrition, and focus. Rest is not the opposite of discipline. It is part of it. Too many people mistake exhaustion for productivity, believing that working longer automatically means achieving more. But the mind and body have limits, and when they are ignored, performance declines. Sleep is one of the most powerful tools for energy management. During deep sleep, the brain consolidates memories, processes emotions, and restores cognitive function. The body repairs tissue, balances hormones, and strengthens the immune system. To sacrifice rest in the name of productivity is to undermine the very foundation upon which discipline is built. True discipline requires the humility to rest, recognizing that recovery is not wasted time, but a strategic investment in sharper focus and sustained effort. Nutrition is another cornerstone of energy management. The foods you consume directly affect your ability to focus, persist, and perform. Highly processed, sugar-laden foods may provide a quick spike in energy, but they inevitably lead to crashes that leave you fatigued and unfocused. A disciplined approach to energy means fueling your body with whole foods, steady sources of energy, and hydration. Nutrition is not only about physical health, but also about mental clarity. A well-fed body supports a sharp mind, and a sharp mind sustains disciplined action. Focus is the final pillar of energy management. In a world of constant distractions, attention is one of the most valuable forms of energy you possess. Every notification, interruption, or multitasking attempt drains your mental reserves. The disciplined individual recognizes that focus is a finite resource and guards it carefully. Techniques such as working in deep, uninterrupted blocks of time, using tools like the Pomodoro technique, and deliberately removing distractions create an environment where focus thrives. Protecting your attention is a form of discipline that magnifies the impact of every action you take. When time and energy are mastered together, discipline becomes more than sheer determination. It becomes a way of living where your hours are structured for meaning, your actions are aligned with priorities, and your energy is protected and directed with intention. Time blocking ensures you show up where it matters. Prioritization ensures you work on what matters most. Structure dismantles procrastination. Rest, nutrition, and focus replenish and direct your energy so that every effort carries weight. Discipline is not about doing more, but about doing what matters with the resources you have. By mastering time and energy, you create the conditions in which discipline can flourish naturally. You stop scattering your efforts and start channeling them with precision. And as your time and energy align, your progress accelerates, your consistency deepens, and your ability to achieve grows exponentially. Chapter 7. Turning consistency into mastery. Discipline is not simply about doing something once or twice with intensity. It is about showing up again and again with intention. True mastery is born not in sudden bursts of effort, but in the long, steady rhythm of consistent practice. Many people desire greatness, but few are willing to embrace the monotony of repetition. Yet it is in that monotony, in the daily grind where progress is often invisible, that real transformation occurs. Discipline without consistency produces little, but consistency guided by discipline produces mastery. The idea of mastery has often been captured by what is popularly known as the 10,000-hour principle, made famous by Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers. This principle suggests that achieving world-class expertise in any field requires roughly 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. While the number itself may not be precise, the principle highlights an important truth. Mastery is the product of time and consistency. No one becomes exceptional overnight. Behind every master musician, athlete, entrepreneur, or leader are thousands of hours spent refining their craft when no one was applauding, when results were slow, and when motivation alone could never have carried them through. But consistency alone is not enough. The 10,000-hour principle, though useful, can be misleading if taken to mean that sheer time guarantees mastery. It is not just about the hours you put in, but about how you use them. This is where the concept of smart practice becomes crucial. Smart practice means practicing with focus, intentionality, and constant refinement. It means stretching yourself beyond your comfort zone rather than mindlessly repeating what you already know. A pianist who plays the same song flawlessly for 10,000 hours may become very good at that song, but without deliberate effort to learn harder pieces and correct mistakes, they will never achieve true mastery. Smart practice requires the courage to confront your weaknesses, It is easy to practice what you're already good at because it feels rewarding. But growth happens when you deliberately lean into the areas that challenge you the most. This is where feedback loops play an essential role. Feedback is the mirror that shows you not only what you are doing right, but, more importantly, what you must correct. Without feedback, you risk reinforcing mistakes and entrenching mediocrity. With feedback, you create a cycle of continuous improvement. Act, receive input, adjust, and act again. Over time, these small refinements accumulate into extraordinary skill. Feedback loops are not limited to coaches, mentors, or supervisors. They can come from your own self-reflection, from data you track, from the results you observe, or even for failure itself. The disciplined individual does not fear feedback but seeks it out, knowing that it is the pathway to growth. Every piece of constructive criticism becomes fuel, every failure becomes a lesson, and every small adjustment becomes a stepping stone toward mastery. The undisciplined, by contrast, avoid feedback because it exposes their weaknesses. But to the disciplined, weakness is simply the raw material that, once refined, becomes strength. The challenge, however, is that results are often painfully slow. This is one of the greatest tests of discipline, continuing to show up when progress feels invisible. The truth is that mastery moves at a pace far slower than our culture of instant gratification would like. In the beginning, effort and results often seem mismatched. You may practice for weeks without seeing significant improvement, or you may pour hours into building a business only to see minimal growth. It is in these moments that most people quit. They confuse slow progress with no progress and abandon the very consistency that would have eventually carried them to success. The disciplined person understands that progress often works like compound interest. At first, the returns are small, almost imperceptible. But as consistency builds, the growth accelerates, and, eventually, the results appear exponential. Mastery is the reward for those who are willing to endure the season of invisibility, who are willing to trust the process even when the evidence seems scarce. Consistency, in the absence of immediate reward, is the crucible where mastery is forged. To stay consistent when results are slow, you must learn to anchor yourself not in outcomes, but in identity. Instead of measuring success only by external milestones, measure it by your ability to show up faithfully. Tell yourself, I'm the kind of person who practices daily. I'm the kind of person who follows through. When you root your discipline in identity, the act itself becomes the reward. The writer finds satisfaction not only in finishing a book, but in being the kind of person who writes every day. The athlete finds joy not only in winning competitions, but in living as someone who trains relentlessly. This shift in perspective transforms consistency from a burden into a declaration of who you are. Mastery is not reserved for a chosen few with extraordinary talent. It is available to anyone who embraces disciplined consistency, smart practice, and a willingness to improve through feedback. It is born in the daily choices to persist when others give up, to refine when others settle, to endure when others demand quick results. In the end, mastery is not an accident, but a deliberate outcome of thousands of disciplined acts woven together over time. The path is long, the progress is often slow, and the process is demanding. But those who stay the course discover a profound truth. Consistency does not just build skill, it builds character. It shapes you into someone who does not quit easily, someone who can be trusted to follow through, someone who transforms potential into reality. And when that consistency is paired with smart practice and feedback, the destination is mastery, not just of your craft, but of yourself. Chapter 8. Discipline in different areas of life. Discipline is not meant to live in theory. It is a force that must be applied to the different dimensions of daily living if it is to transform your life. Too often, people compartmentalize discipline, treating it as something to practice in one area while neglecting others. But true discipline is holistic. It flows into every part of your existence, shaping your body, your mind, your relationships, your finances, and your work. To master discipline is to weave it seamlessly into the fabric of your life, so that every sphere reflects consistency, intentionality, and growth. Health and fitness are perhaps the most visible arenas in which discipline shows its power. The human body thrives on movement, nourishment, and rest. Yet many resist the daily practices that keep them strong. The temptation to skip a workout, to indulge in unhealthy foods, or to cut corners on sleep is constant. But discipline here is not about waiting until you feel like exercising or eating right. It is about forcing yourself to show up even when you do not feel ready. The disciplined individual understands that the hardest part of working out is not the workout itself, but the act of beginning. By cultivating the habit of showing up, walking into the gym, lacing up the shoes, unrolling the mat, you cross the threshold that most never cross. Over time, these consistent acts of discipline not only transform your physical body, but also reinforce the belief that you are someone who honors your commitments. A disciplined body becomes a reflection of a disciplined mind, and the energy, clarity, and confidence you gain ripple into every other area of life. Finances provide another powerful test of discipline. Money is deeply tied to emotion, and without discipline, it can quickly slip through your fingers. Many dream of wealth, but wealth is not built through dreams. It is built through disciplined saving, careful spending, and consistent investing. Financial discipline requires resisting the impulse to spend for short-term pleasure in order to secure long-term freedom. It is saying no to the unnecessary purchase today so that you can say yes to the life you want tomorrow. The disciplined saver does not simply accumulate money. They cultivate control over their desires. The disciplined investor does not chase quick wins. They patiently plant seeds that grow over time. This form of discipline builds not only security, but also confidence. For financial stability frees you from desperation and allows you to pursue opportunities without fear. In the same way that physical discipline strengthens the body, financial discipline strengthens your foundation, ensuring that your life rests on stability rather than chaos. Relationships, too, demand discipline, though many fail to recognize it. Love, respect, and communication are not sustained by emotion alone, but by deliberate, consistent choices. The undisciplined approach to relationships seeks constant gratification, expecting others to fill every void and withdrawing when challenges arise. But the disciplined approach understands that meaningful relationships require effort. It means disciplining yourself to listen even when you want to argue, to show respect even when you feel frustrated, to communicate honestly even when it is uncomfortable. Discipline in relationships is choosing to remain faithful when temptation whispers, choosing to speak kindly when anger burns, and choosing to show up for those you love not just when it is easy, but especially when it is hard. Such discipline deepens trust, strengthens bonds, and transforms fleeting emotions into enduring connections. Without it, relationships crumble under the weight of selfishness. With it, they become the foundation of a meaningful life. Work and creativity also require the force of discipline, perhaps more than any other sphere. Ideas are abundant, but finished work is rare. Many start projects with enthusiasm, but abandon them when the novelty wears off or when obstacles arise. Discipline here means finishing what you start. It is committing not just to inspiration, but to execution, pushing through boredom, frustration, and doubt to bring your work into completion. The disciplined writer finishes the manuscript, even when the words do not flow. The disciplined entrepreneur launches the product, even when fear of failure whispers loudly. The disciplined artist continues to create, even when recognition is absent. In work and creativity, discipline is the bridge between vision and reality. Without it, the world remains full of unfulfilled dreams and unfinished projects. With it, ideas become tangible, and potential becomes legacy. What makes discipline so powerful across these areas, health, finances, relationships, and work, is that the lessons learned in one sphere strengthen the others. The patience you develop by exercising daily becomes the patience you apply to investing. The persistence you build by finishing projects becomes the persistence you bring to resolving conflicts in relationships. Discipline is transferable. It does not remain confined to one part of your life. The more you practice it holistically, the stronger and more resilient you become. The disciplined life is not perfect, nor is it free from struggle. You will stumble in health, make mistakes in money, argue in relationships, and face setbacks in work. But the essence of discipline is not perfection. It is persistence. It is the willingness to show up again, to learn, to correct, and to keep moving forward. By practicing discipline in these essential areas of life, you create a life that is not only successful, but also balanced, stable, and deeply fulfilling. Chapter 9. Resisting the pull of comfort. One of the greatest enemies of discipline is comfort. At first glance, comfort appears harmless, even desirable. After all, who does not long for ease, rest, and pleasure? But when comfort becomes the guiding principle of life, it turns into a silent trap, pulling you away from growth and keeping you bound to mediocrity. The human brain, wired for survival, naturally gravitates toward comfort because it perceives effort and struggle as threats. In ancient times, this instinct served a purpose. Conserving energy meant staying alive in harsh environments where resources were scarce. But in the modern world, where abundance surrounds us, this same instinct can sabotage progress, leading us to choose short-term ease over long-term achievement. This is the essence of the trap of instant gratification. Everywhere you look, society offers quick fixes and immediate rewards. Fast food instead of nourishing meals, endless scrolling instead of focused study, online shopping instead of disciplined saving. These instant pleasures flood the brain with dopamine, giving temporary satisfaction while stealing long-term fulfillment. The danger lies in how subtle and addictive this cycle becomes. Each time you indulge in instant gratification, you reinforce the neural pathways that crave it, making it even harder to resist in the future. Discipline, therefore, is the counterforce that interrupts this cycle. It is the conscious choice to delay gratification, to endure the discomfort of waiting, and to trust in the greater rewards that come with patience. Resisting the pull of comfort means training yourself to choose what is hard, but right over what is easy but wrong. This is rarely glamorous. In fact, it is often painful. It means getting out of bed early when sleep whispers for you to stay. It means tackling the difficult project instead of hiding behind busy work. It means saying no to the indulgence you crave so you can say yes to the freedom you desire. Each time you make the harder choice, you strengthen your character and prove to yourself that you are capable of more than your impulses suggest. Over time, these choices accumulate, reshaping your identity into that of someone who does not run from difficulty, but embraces it as the path to growth. The reason the hard choice matters is that it is almost always the meaningful one. Growth never occurs in the realm of ease. Muscles grow only when stressed. Knowledge deepens only when challenged. And resilience forms only when tested. The easy choice preserves your current state. The hard choice expands it. When you consistently choose the harder but wiser path, you align your life with the principle of long-term gain over short-term relief. This does not mean denying yourself every joy, but rather discerning between what brings fleeting pleasure and what brings lasting fulfillment. Endurance becomes the critical trait in this battle against comfort. Long-term goals demand sustained effort, often with little visible reward in the beginning. The student who dreams of becoming a doctor must endure years of study, exams, and sleepless nights before ever wearing the white coat. The entrepreneur must push through failed launches, financial risk, and rejection before the business takes shape. The athlete must train day after day, sometimes in pain and often in solitude, before stepping onto the stage of competition. In all these cases, endurance is the ability to remain steadfast in the pursuit of the goal despite the lure of easier paths. Building endurance is not about superhuman strength, but about repeated exposure to discomfort. Each time you push a little further, you expand your capacity to endure more. Just as a runner increases stamina by gradually lengthening their distance, you increase mental and emotional endurance by consistently stretching beyond your comfort zone. Over time, what once felt unbearable becomes manageable, and what once seemed impossible becomes routine. Discipline and endurance together create a formidable force, allowing you to pursue long-term goals with resilience rather than giving in to the seductive pull of shortcuts. Resisting comfort does not mean rejecting rest or denying yourself all pleasure. Rest is essential, and joy has its place. But there is a vast difference between restorative rest and destructive indulgence. Rest replenishes your energy, so you can continue forward with strength. Indulgence drains it, leaving you weaker and more dependent on the very comfort that holds you back. The disciplined individual learns to distinguish between the two, embracing rest as a tool for endurance, while rejecting indulgence as a thief of progress. The point is, the battle against comfort is a battle for your future. Each decision you make, each choice between the easy now and the harder later, shapes the trajectory of your life. To resist the pull of comfort is to declare that your destiny matters more than your immediate desires. It is to live not for the fleeting satisfaction of today, but for the enduring fulfillment of tomorrow. And as you train yourself to make these choices consistently, you build not only the life you desire, but also the person you were meant to become.